Hey there and welcome to Recap Studio. Follow us today to a 2009 American romantic comedy movie titled The Proposal. Movie is about a pushy boss who forces her young assistant to marry her in order to keep her visa status in the US and avoid deportation to Canada. Before we start, make sure to subscribe and turn on bell for notifications so you can watch more videos like this. Margaret Tate is an executive editor-in-chief of a New York book publishing company and, due to her unpleasant personality, is universally hated by everyone she works with. After learning she is about to be deported back to Canada because she violated the terms of her work visa, she persuades her much-abused assistant, Andrew Paxton, to marry her. She reminds Andrew that if she's deported, the work he put in as her assistant will be lost, and he'll be set back in his dream to become an editor. Mr. Gilbertson, a U.S. immigration agent, informs them that he suspects they are committing fraud to avoid Margaret's deportation. Gilbertson tells them that they'll be asked questions about each other separately. If their answers don't match, Margaret will be deported to Canada permanently and Andrew will be convicted of a felony punishable by a $250,000 fine and 5 years in prison. Andrew insists that Margaret make him an editor after their marriage and publish the book he's been recommending to her. Margaret is forced to agree. The couple travels to Sycamore, Alaska, Andrew's hometown, to meet his family. Margaret meets Andrew's mother Grace and grandmother Annie, known as Gammy. During the trip to the family home, Margaret notices that nearly every shop in town carries the name Paxton and learns that Andrew's family is in fact very wealthy. During a welcome home party, Andrew confronts his father, Joe, who is angry about Andrew dating the boss he has so long disliked and thinks he is using her to get ahead in his career. After their argument, Andrew announces the engagement to everyone. Margaret also meets Gertrude, Andrew's ex-girlfriend. At the party they tell everyone the story of how Andrew proposed to Margaret. The next day, Grace and Annie take Margaret to a local bar as part of her bachelorette party to watch a strip dance by a locally famous but over-the-hill exotic dancer, Ramon. Stepping away from the show, Margaret learns from Gertrude that Andrew wanted to become an editor and make his own life and that Andrew had proposed to Gertrude. However, Gertrude refused because she didn't want to leave Sycamore for New York. Returning home, Margaret learns of the conflict between Andrew and Joe. That night, Margaret asks Andrew about his relationship with his father, but Andrew refuses to talk. Instead, Margaret opens up to Andrew. The next day, the family convinces them to marry while they are in Sycamore. After Margaret realizes how close Andrew's family is, she becomes upset, gets on Andrew's boat, and speeds away with him. Annie appears to have a heart attack, causing her and the family to be airlifted to the hospital and convinces them to reconcile before she passes away. After she succeeds in getting things moving again, she admits to faking the heart attack as it was the only means to get their attention and tells the pilot to head to the airport in hopes of catching up to Margaret. Andrew's parents realize he really loves Margaret. He goes to New York and tells Margaret he loves her in front of the entire office staff. They kiss, then go to Gilbertson and inform him they are again engaged, but for real this time. The film ends with Gilbertson asking questions, some of them irrelevant, not only to Andrew and Margaret, but also Grace, Joe, Annie, and Ramon. Meanwhile, the children are picked up by a friendly cop. They pass the scene of the accident with the Ferrari and the kids see a body being covered up. Continuing on, he stops at the site of the other crash. Telling the children to stay in the car while he investigates, he finds the car and radios that there is one fatality. Terry knocks him out then, severely injured, he climbs to the road and staggers towards Ruby and Rhett, hiding a gun. Ruby gets into the driver's seat and, telling Rhett to put on his seatbelt, speeds into Terry, killing him. The kids are last seen placing flowers at their parents' grave with their Uncle Jack, who hugs them and says that things will get easier. Ruby says that they already have, and the three leave together to go home to Chicago. Well, if I could split the movie into two, I would say that the first half is a superb proposal and the second half is fairly traditional Hollywood peplum. In the first half, the wonderful comedic timing and chemistry between Bullock and Reynolds was terrific. The writing was first-rate intellectual, snappy sparring, even throwing in some literary references in the put-downs. Kudos to the director, and Fletcher, and the screenwriter, Pete Chiarelli. The completely different tone in the second half, I surmise, could only be attributed to the studios or producers stepping in and stating that the film must appeal to a wider audience. We, then, get lots of family characters thrown in, with a great reduction of Bullock and Reynolds' mutual screen time. And when they do share time in the second half, it's more about slapstick and physical humor, producers needing appeal to wider, younger audience. Maudlin music comes in on the soundtrack, letting us know that this part of the movie is supposed to tug on our heartstrings. I don't buy the inevitable resolution either. I don't believe that it is supported well or justified by what came before it. The first 45 minutes is well worth seeing. I wish the filmmakers could have pushed and maintained the pace and feel for the entire movie. Reynolds and Bullock are so good, they could be this generation's Tracy and Hepburn. I'd like to see them in another project that follows through all the way. By the way, this film was actually shot in Boston, and the Alaska scenes in Manchester by the sea and Rockport on the North Shore with digital effects adding snow-capped mountains. You might even recognize motif number 1, a famous small building on a wharf in Rockport which has been the subject of many famous painters and photographers' work. It was also fun seeing some of my local Boston area acting colleagues doing background work in the film. To watch more explanations of these kind of movies, don't forget to let me know how you feel about today's video in the comments below. Make sure to subscribe and turn on bell for notifications, it really helps my channel. Thanks for watching.